Hi.
Hi, welcome back to the Great Imposters podcast.
Just JoJo and Annie.
I love a solo episode. I mean, it's like solo duo.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and it's like we're talking about therapy today, and then this is kind of also therapy. So it's like we're double upping on therapy.
It's so meta.
So meta.
Oh my gosh. Well,
so meta.
So meta. Thank you for joining us. If this is your first time here at the Great Imposters podcast, hi, welcome. I'm Joelle.
I'm Annie.
And this podcast was born out of two friends that decided one day at the greenhouse having lunch to conquer their imposter syndrome, say F it to any fear, doubt, imposter syndrome, create our podcast.
Yeah.
Why not us? Let's do it. And what we like to do is have the conversations with each other that you're having in your head.
Yeah.
So let's get into it. Today is such a good episode. We decided, well, you know what? We're going to scratch that. You know we like to start with an icebreaker.
We do. We do
love
love
it.
a good icebreaker.
Annie had the idea to let's each think of a surprise icebreaker for each other.
Yeah.
Remember when you said that yesterday?
Yes, I do.
Did you remember?
Of course I did. Am I like looking around the room right now like, fuck, what's my icebreaker going to be? But
Do you want me to go first?
yeah, you go first because I can think of stuff on the fly.
Okay, well, Annie gave the assignment. She didn't do it herself.
I'm sorry.
It's fine.
I'm forgetful.
It's okay. Listen, it happens to the best of us.
Yeah.
It's still summer here, so you all know how we feel about summer.
Yeah.
Okay, so my icebreaker for you, Annie, is what is right now currently? What is your number one place on your travel bucket list?
Oh. I don't know. I just did that labored O. I think it's definitely the west coast of Australia.
Oh, that's so specific.
Yes, because I've been to Sydney and Sydney's amazing and I want to go back there forever and always. And I've spent a lot of time in New Zealand.
Excuse me.
Fun fact about Annie Rivera, I used to do the global marketing campaign for Tourism New Zealand, all their Facebook,
That's
Twitter
so cool.
advertising. It was an exception. I can't believe I have never really talked about it on the podcast because it was an amazing opportunity and a very cool job at an advertising agency.
That is very cool.
Which though that sentence people don't usually say, it's usually like I was slinging Pizza Hut, but it was a really cool account and I loved it and I got to go to New Zealand and whatever. But the west coast of Australia, like Brisbane and up by they call it the Gold Coast. It's like where the coral reef is. Oh my God. I want to go there so badly.
Cool.
I'm a little scared of all the things that'll probably kill me there, but
what?
There's just a lot of scary wildlife.
Oh,
in Australia.
wildlife.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. But I guess I just I won't go camping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet. Do
Okay,
you want to
great.
know mine? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Joelle, tell us yours.
Right now it's Japan.
Okay.
Yeah. I really want to go to Tokyo.
Yeah.
I feel so I'm 36. I'm hoping that's a 40th trip.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I have 4 years to plan for it.
Okay.
But yeah, that's my number one. When I think of because I feel bucket list, it's so funny. I've never been to Austin, but
You haven't?
I know, which is crazy. And it's I need to go to Austin, but it's what, a 2-hour flight? I could do that whenever. I feel when I think of bucket list, it's it's somewhere I gotta really plan to go halfway across the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to lose a couple listeners real quick?
Sure.
I think Austin's overrated.
I have heard you say that before. I think you're the...
You were about to be I've heard, and then you're wait, no, it's Annie.
No, everyone I know loves Austin. So
I think Nashville's cooler than Austin.
I mean, I've heard that too, but I think
Okay.
it's totally a preference thing.
Yeah.
Isn't Austin more of a desert vibe too?
Yeah, it's
A little bit.
and it's hotter. I think that people get caught in the whimsy of being in Texas. It's oh, we're in Texas. Texas is so, everything's bigger in Texas. And I'm just it's not. I don't know.
Okay.
The tacos are not that good.
You know who's better? Who everything's bigger in Texas? Haters.
Hater.
You. Haters are bigger in Texas.
So I'm sorry, Austin. I might also have a negative.
That was her, not me. FYI, Austin, you're still cool with me. I've never been.
Yeah, that I might also have a subliminal negative association because my college ex-boyfriend lived there, so I went back a lot to
Okay.
So maybe I just associate it with an ex-boyfriend or something.
Fair.
Fair.
Okay.
Okay. So
So you've been thinking a long time about your icebreaker.
I'm such a scatterbrain all the time. Okay. So We're going out
Okay.
on a weekend, a Friday night.
Okay.
Okay. Would you rather have to go out to the restaurant you have been wanting to try for ages, okay? But your resi's at 8 p.m. But you've been trying to get into this restaurant forever, okay?
Okay.
Because we all know Joelle likes the 5 p.m. dinner time,
Yep.
okay? Or would you rather go on a blind double couples date? 8 p.m. favorite dinner or like bucket list dinner place, or have to go to dinner at 5:30 with a random couple that you don't know. It's like a blind date.
100% the 8 p.m. dinner.
Okay.
So the reason I'll say that is because, number one, you're asking me at a good time, because 8 p.m. in the summer is like 5 p.m. in the winter.
Oh, this is new to me.
Right?
Yeah.
Not 8, but like I can deal with
The tolerance, yeah.
I could deal with a later dinner because of the sun.
Okay.
Like the length of the sun during the day, right? I feel like 8 p.m. in the summer is just not true 8 p.m.
Yeah, it's science.
It's like it's science.
Yeah.
But I mean, 5 p.m. 8 p.m. in the winter might be more of a toss up.
Okay.
The only thing is, and I think this is a question more of like how I value my time,
Yeah, it is.
because I would rather suck it up, do my 8 p.m. dinner, do the drinks first, be done after my dinner, go
Okay.
home, so that I'm still not getting home after like 11, because I just can't do that. Rather than maybe spend money on a babysitter, plan a night around being with people that I don't want to talk to.
Okay.
Like that to me is like,
even if you were
too
like,
big of a
we're
risk.
going to be home, well, at that date, you'd be home at 8 p.m. You'd rather risk it.
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I
What would
respect
you?
that.
I mean, I would say what would you say, but I already know your answer.
Would be the 8 p.m.
Yeah, because you don't even care about going to dinner at 8 p.m.
I don't. I
Yes.
don't even care.
For anyone listening, if you're new, we have had this conversation a lot more so in like our first handful of episodes that were also shot in the winter.
Yes, true.
That I just feel like the 5 p.m. dinner is the most underrated, just social experience in
yeah.
in our culture.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's that. Well, we love a good icebreaker. We
love a good
We could do
icebreaker.
it forever. So let's get into our. Oh, did you have something else to say?
I was going to say, this is a consistent theme where I come up with an idea for the podcast, pitch it to you, and then forget myself. So anyway, it's just
something for you to work on, I guess.
just a personal growth.
Hey, that's what a segue.
What a
If I
segue.
don't say so myself, because today we're talking about therapy. Okay. What episode was it? Anxiety.
Like 6 or 7. Right?
Okay, so go back to episode 1. It was either episode 6 or 7. It was all about anxiety. Annie and I just basically talked for an hour back and forth, kind of interviewing each other about our experience with anxiety, with therapy, with medication.
Yeah.
And I would say it was definitely one of the most listened to and downloaded episodes that we've put out, but it was by far the most feedback we've ever gotten. Like the texts, the voice notes, the DMs of just, thank you for this.
Yeah.
Thank you for talking about this. Thank you for finally giving me that push to go seek out therapy. Thank you for the fact, like, knowing that I'm not alone. Thank you for, making it normal to go on, to look into going on an SSRI. So like that, we were really just like humbled by it.
Yeah.
We were also really surprised by, I think, how many people have been like closeted, like anxiety humans.
And just grinning and bearing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we wanted to just like keep going with this topic and dive more into certain silos of the greater mental health conversation. And I feel like I don't want that to put people off, because mental health is such a, it's like so
Wide net these days.
It's a wide net, and it's also so like corporate America, check the box, mental health awareness, blah, blah, blah. Like it's just so, that's not what we want to do. So we don't want to like title this episode something you're going to scroll past.
Well, and if you're a boomer and you're listening, you're like, great, another fucking millennial is going to get on here and talk about boundaries. And that's not what
Exactly. And we might. So so buckle up.
But we're gonna hit many different layers
Yes.
to our 3 boomer listeners. So
Yes.
stay.
One of Annie's dad. My father-in-law, Annie's dad.
Never
Yes.
been to therapy. So
Yep.
Mark, this one's for you.
Yeah, Mark, come on, go to
Yeah.
therapy. So we're going to talk about therapy. We're going to talk about our own kind of journeys and experiences with it. We're going to give some advice on it, some of our observations, and also we're going to talk about the negatives of therapy. That's something people do not.
Yeah.
Millennials are therapy apologists, and we aren't going to do that. We are going to talk about kind of all sides of it.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. So let's talk a little bit about our whys, Joelle.
Okay.
For me, it's that I think I've been in therapy for a long time, which I'll share more about throughout the episode. But for me, I think I'm starting to see, I think there's been experiences in my life where I've definitely seen the negative side of therapy, like the can I coin the term therapized?
Therapized.
Therapized?
Right.
It's probably a word, right?
Well, I think you just added a syllable that didn't need to be there.
Okay.
Therapized.
Yeah, you're right.
Therapized.
Therapized, yeah.
Yeah.
I've definitely experienced kind of like, I've been in relationships where maybe it was being overdone or it was being weaponized or not used appropriately. So I wanted to talk about that for sure. I also have been, I thought that the conversation you and I had about like, when do you know if you need to find like a new therapist or like what if you do need to find a new therapist was so eye-opening for me because I realized like it's just something that people have a lot of questions about. People want to know like, well, how do you approach it? What do you think about? Like I've heard people talk about like, I don't have anything to talk about in therapy. And then you spend like one night with them and you're like, the fuck you don't,
Yeah.
you know? So for me, it's the why of like, let's destigmatize it from both angles of like, no, it's not all like someone sitting in a room telling you to cut everyone in your life off that you don't like.
Right.
And the other side of like, you probably do have something to talk about and you really could benefit from it. And like, it's gonna make society better overall if we all just kind of bite the bullet and take that time to like get to know ourselves a little better.
Totally. I would say I co-sign everything Annie just said. And I also would say from my perspective, my personal why, and also kind of why we talked about adding this episode on as in like kind of anecdotally to our anxiety episode is that we got so much feedback, and the show is us, but it's for you. Like we want to help as many people as we can. We want to get through to as many people as we can. We don't speak to each other just for fun. Like we don't want to just like speak into a void. We want to speak to make an impact. And I just feel like these are the types of episodes that are actually going to make an impact. And that's been proven based on the messages we received from the last episode that we did in this topic, really in this arena. So I've been in therapy for so long, on and off. And I just thought it would be really like fun to talk about it in a really normal, approachable way. And I also will meet people who have never been to therapy before. And I'm literally like, how?
Yeah, like it's a help. It's a tool, it's another tool in your toolkit. And we talked about this in our, it'll be 2 episodes ago now in the male friendship episode about how like your partner can't be everything to you.
Yes.
That's not sustainable. It's not a good idea. Like, so you do need another person to just soundboard off of. Like there's so many people I've talked to who have said, well, sometimes like I started therapy, but then the second time I was like, I don't even know what I'm going to talk about today. I can guarantee you if you're feeling that way, you're going to get in there and you're going to talk for 50 minutes. You're going to talk because like it just comes out. And it's, even if you go in there and you just need to talk about like the day-to-day doldrums of your job, you're sparing, your partner or the people in your life having to be that therapist for you, and you're getting professional advice.
That's the thing too, is like your friends and your partner are, number one, incredibly biased.
Incredibly.
And number two, not credentialed
Yeah.
to be giving you. I mean, people are great at giving advice.
Yes.
But they're also not like, they don't have the degrees and the expertise in psychology or whatever it is that they studied to really be doing this professionally. And I mean, the other thing too is like, I feel like therapy, it's gotten really approachable and popular, but there's just, I think our perspectives together and also our separate ones, I hope we'll get through to people.
Yeah.
So that's what we want to talk about. So the first thing we wanted to bring up, we have a couple of topics that we're going to go through. We're not just going to like sit here and banter about therapy for an hour.
Although we could.
We could. The first is like going kind of along with the theme of, I guess, the overarching theme of our podcast, which is imposter syndrome. I feel like a lot of people have imposter syndrome about going to therapy. Like, I feel like I'm not fucked up enough.
Yes.
You know what I mean? People are like, I don't need it. So we're going to start there. Like, who needs it? My answer is everyone.
I think everyone can benefit from it.
That's true. Okay, so take that back. Not everyone needs it. Everyone can benefit from it.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's like, I had a therapist say to me once, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. because there are times in your life in which you're going to need it. You're going to be like, I have to talk to someone next week about these problems that I'm having. And then there's going to be times in your life where it would be an added benefit, but maybe you can save some money and go every 3 weeks, every 2 weeks.
Sure.
So like it ebbs and flows, but everyone can benefit from it.
Totally. In some capacity.
In some capacity.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I also think something it's done for me. I mean, I started therapy at a point in my life where it was right after I got married. I had dabbled in it before, but never like gone consistently. Yeah. And it was right after I got, so I have actively been in therapy for 10 years. Mm-hmm. There have been periods of months where I didn't go.
Yeah.
So just, I guess for whatever that's worth, like Annie said, it's not a sprint. Like it's not like, and you don't have to go every week. It doesn't like make you it's not like going to church where it's like if you're not like a bad you know what I mean? You're not like a bad Catholic if you like don't go to church one Sunday. It's like, it's not like that. That's not how this is designed. It's so nuanced. And I would just say like my therapy over the course of 10 years has just, I would say it shaped me.
Yeah.
Like it has completely rounded me as a person and given me the ability to see things through lenses in all different aspects of life that I would never have the tools, to use your term, prior. So I would say anyone who wants to really like kind of live like that and have different lenses, you will benefit from that.
And just like for life to be, it's very similar to the conversation we had about anti-anxiety medicine of like, things will just roll off your shoulders a little better.
Yes.
You'll have that Gore-Tex. Didn't we use that analogy in that episode? Yeah, you'll have that Gore-Tex a little where like everything's not going to permeate anymore. And that's just like a better way to live life. Like than taking yourself or everything that people say to you so unbelievably seriously that it's hurtful. So I started so I've heard this a few times. I want to address this like who needs therapy piece, because I've heard this a couple of times where people are like, oh, well, I don't need it. Like I've gotten this far in life, or like, well, I actually, I'm at peace with my childhood, or I don't have like, again, that I don't have anything to talk about. I've even heard like comedians, because I want to continue to pursue comedy, of them say like, if I went to therapy, I wouldn't be funny anymore. Like there's this belief that as you like unpack more of yourself, it's going to change you in some way where you don't recognize yourself, I think. Like people think that some of their coping mechanisms and tools that they've developed throughout their life are something they don't want to work away in therapy. But like I've never had that. I've only had that experience in a positive way. Like, oh, hey, you're like, eating a pint of Ben and Jerry's when you're sad because you don't know how to process your feelings. And then like you go to therapy and you learn like to journal, healthier than a pint of Ben and Jerry's.
Sure.
Like I've never had the experience of like it erased a part of me that was a survival mechanism. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like I understand what you're saying. I feel like some people, I would say I hear what you're saying more when people talk about anxiety medication, especially because, which that makes sense. Like people are afraid it's going to make them a zombie in life and like they're not going to feel things deeply. And that's simply not what it is.
No.
It doesn't do that at all. It just literally takes the edge off of life. And, but I think on another, I guess, level, therapy is the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's truly just like investing in yourself.
Yeah.
And your ability to like process everything that happens and see it in a different way and just kind of be a better human. Yeah.
And you hear a lot of people, probably more men than women, I would argue, say that they particularly feel like we don't need therapy when it comes to like marriage counseling or marriage therapy. And I couldn't disagree more. I think like it's doing proactive work. Like there's another analogy people have used where it's just like, it's changing the oil in your car. Like you're working through things and it's not a sign of failure. Like going to marriage counseling doesn't mean that your marriage sucks.
Well, that's the other, I mean, even just sticking with the individual therapy, the old adage is that therapy's for the weak.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is like, I think therapy's for the strong, to be honest.
Yeah. For the people that are like willing to have an introspective look at themselves.
Right.
And evolve.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Evolve, change, see yourself.
Yeah.
Get feedback. Yeah. I think all of those things are true. And learn about yourself, and that can be scary.
I think that's a big part of it, is that like when you hear people say like, I don't have anything to talk about from specifically like childhood, it's that like you've probably blocked a lot of that shit out.
Right.
Like, you're there, those pathways are closed and you are surviving with them closed, but like opening them isn't going to be detrimental. It's going to be like a positive experience.
It's going to heal you. And
It's going to heal you.
yes.
Yeah.
So we also want to like talk specifically about our own journeys, because I feel like there's probably, you know, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's probably people sitting there being like, thinking that there's this very like cartoon skit of like, person gets up, walks into therapy chair, lays down, talks to the therapist for an hour, gets up, feels a little better, comes back and does it next week. Like, that's just not what it is.
Yeah. Everybody thinks it's like Tony Soprano.
Right.
Yeah.
So I feel like it might be helpful to like anyone considering therapy or thinking about it, just to kind of hear like the way that we've experienced it.
Yeah.
So like I said, I did a little bit of therapy around the time I got married, and then I moved out to Arizona, and I ended up finding my therapist out there 10 years ago, and I'm still with him. So I was with him 2 years in person, and I've been with him 8 years virtually. So that's just something else to point out. Like, therapy looks different for everyone. I haven't seen a therapist in person for 8 years.
Wow.
And he's still someone who I talked, like, he knows more about me than anyone in the world. Like, he's just, he's a really crucial part of my life. And it started out of a lot of different stressors. And then, you know, it also helped me in my first few years being married, moving to a new city, job stuff. It was a lot of stuff. I mean, I'm not going to get like too into it, because it's just life, right? Like, life happens to everyone. And I think the other thing is, like, if you're thinking, going back to our original point about like who needs it and when you decide to go, you can't, like, there's no trauma contest.
Yeah.
Like, if something is traumatic enough to you, like if you got an offender bender, this is a really dumb example. It's just the first thing that came to my mind.
But like, people will have like, they'll be afraid to get back in their car.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
like, just because you get an offender bender and it shakes you up and you are afraid to get back in your car, that's your trauma. That's your story. You don't have to have this guilt of like, I didn't get in a car wreck and someone in my car died and I'm the survivor. Like, it doesn't have to be like that for you to be like, I need therapy, because it's your own anxious energy within your own body. Like, and that's just like an example to talk about it. But I probably had some of that. Like, I'm not fucked up. I don't need therapy. But then once I did it, and I just realized I mean, for me, I needed it at the time. And then I really couldn't imagine my life without it. So, you know, it's been really instrumental to me as a person moving through marriage, pregnancy, career, friendships, family, all communications. And I just don't think there's any of those things I could have gotten through the way I did without the therapy. Yeah. And even to this day, like, I've been in places in my life where I've gone to therapy multiple times a week. And Annie and I were talking about it the other day. Like, I hadn't gone to therapy. I didn't even notice. I had my first therapy session last week, and I was like, when was the last time we spoke? I asked my therapist, and he was like, it's been 3 months. And I was like, holy shit, that's a really long break, you know, for someone, I guess, who has been doing therapy for as long as I have. But I think it's also a testament, and I want everyone to know this, like, it's as needed.
Yeah, for sure.
I clearly haven't needed it as much the past 3 months. But it's also okay to just keep a weekly cadence and know that you have it to look forward to. If you're a super routine oriented person, having it proactively on the calendar is a great idea too. Yeah. But for me, I would say, like, just keeping me, and I also, like, I mean, I talked about this in the anxiety episode. Like, I tried to therapize my anxiety away for years. Yeah. And then my therapist never pushed me into anxiety medication, which is a good therapist won't. They're just going to continue to, like, you know, like, answer to you what, like, okay, well, these are the benefits. Yeah. I mean, they're not going to make the choice for you.
No, that's such a good point. There are people that also have this conversation in their head of like, I'm not messed up enough, or like, I don't need it. And also, I don't want to be pushed to take meds that I'm not ready to take. And
Right.
it's like, that's not what's
No.
happening in talk therapy.
In fact, I wasn't ready for like 6 years.
Ditto.
Yeah, something like that. Maybe longer. 6 or 7 years. I was just like talk therapy, and like the same themes would come up of my like extreme, the things that were really holding me back from life. Like we talked about, again, go back to that episode. We talked a lot about how Annie and I are both super triggered by school shootings, especially having children, and just like how it like debilitated both of our lives. And that was, for me, that was my final straw before getting in, starting medication. But yeah, like my therapist, like it got to a point where I was like, I can't do therapy alone. Like I need something more. So that definitely, I would say, took me to another level of being able to self therapize.
Yeah, like
self-soothe.
a good therapist is going to give you that agency to decide when it's time to get medicine.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I guess just for anyone listening who's never done it, like you shouldn't be going to someone who's pushing you into medication, but for some people therapy's enough and for some people it's not. For me it wasn't, and I have no interest in going off of my SSRI because I'm cruising.
Yeah. I was definitely I fell in the category of viewing therapy as a weakness. I mean, if you really want to get into it, it probably has to do with my Irish Catholic upbringing and whatever. But definitely had that feeling of like, I've gotten this far. I'm so scrappy. I always land on my feet, blah, blah, blah. I don't need it. And then when our house in Seattle burned down, even after that, I was like, no, I'm fine. We're fine. Everyone lived. We're fine. And then I think it was either someone in my life, I can't remember, so I'm sorry if it was you, was like, you got to go talk about this because it's a very significant and rare form of grief when you lose like a house in that way. And so I started after that. And what was crazy was like, I'm glad I did because then I was in therapy when I went through an estrangement with my sister. And then later when we stopped talking to my father-in-law, and then I had experience with another relative in Seattle, becoming estranged from them. And like, I had therapy as luckily as a tool to kind of process all of that. But what I think was the most impactful thing is going back to that, like your partner and your friends and the people in your life can't be everything. They can't help you really deal with some of those very intense things that happen in your life, because they're not equipped, but also because that's not really fair to them.
No.
And I was so, especially the thing with my sister, like that's so hard. And they're all like estrangements in particular. It's like a thing that society does not understand. Like there was always the response of like, well, just call your sister, or like, we'll just go to your father-in-law's house, or like, well, you guys should do this or you guys should do that. And it was like, it's not that black and white. So then I found I was getting mad at the people in my life who would have that response, like, just call her. And it was like, you don't understand.
Yes.
And so
you don't understand is the yes.
Yes.
That's like, okay, this is a trigger.
Yeah.
If you're telling someone something and they're giving you advice and you're saying you just don't understand, you need to go to therapy.
You need to pay someone to understand.
Yes.
Yes. And to give you advice, because that's the beauty of a good therapist is they're going to hear you out and they're going to tell you the things you don't want to hear in a really tactful way.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, so it was tremendously helpful. But it's funny, like I even did it like in secret for a long time. Like I didn't talk about, cause it's a recent phenomenon that we all talk about it.
Yes.
But like, I don't even think,
yeah, like now that BetterHelp is like,
yeah,
sponsoring everyone's podcast. We're open.
Everyone's podcast.
We're open.
But yeah, I mean, I don't even think my husband knew, but like, I don't think my friends or anything knew, but it was a tremendously impactful tool. And then I took my like, well, I can do anything energy, like we were just talking about, and was like, well, I don't need medication because I'm dealing with all of this in therapy. And then what broke me into realizing like, no, my brain and my neural pathways need to be rewired was motherhood. Like the anxieties that come to you with having children and with our like surprise third and having to navigate, like my oldest daughter was 3 when Cal was born, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, that is crazy.
And so then we had a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a newborn, and it was like
Running a daycare.
it was like running a daycare that I was not equipped to run.
You're like, I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah, and that like we for sure would have lost our licensure on the first inspection. So that was really the turning point for me of like, no, I need an actual like medical aid. I need a little something for this. But yeah, and you know what's funny though, Joelle, is so I like this juxtaposition because you and I have had different experiences. One, I always had to see a woman.
Oh.
I cannot be told what to do by any men ever. Two,
You would if you went to mine.
two, I have never, during COVID, I really struggled because I do not like virtual therapy. I don't do well with it.
Huh.
I think because I'm so in my head about even what I'm that meme that's like, if I don't make my therapist laugh this week, the session isn't worth it. Like, I'm like that. Like, I have to be able to read exactly what they're thinking, even though I can't read what they're thinking because they're good at their job. But like, I need that face-to-face energy. And so therefore, when I left Seattle, I found a new therapist in Nashville. And then I've had 2 different ones here as well.
Okay. So you just made me realize something.
What?
I haven't seen my therapist's face in 8 years.
Wait, it's not over Zoom?
No, it's phone. It's a phone call.
See that? Like I'm like, I need to see their face.
Yeah, no, I think I didn't want to do Zoom. Like when we left Arizona, I was like, this man has gotten me and my husband through some stuff that like, I genuinely don't know that like I don't know that humans are equipped to like really communicate through things when people communicate so differently.
Yeah, that's so hard.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
And I just think that this like person got through to me and to Chad and to both of us at the same time. Mm-hmm. And we both see him separately. And then like, if we ever, we call him like the expediter. We're like, all right, we need to like get him on the phone just to like get through this one quick.
Yeah.
Very rarely now, but it just like a lot of things came up and I just I couldn't imagine when we were moving to Nashville, I couldn't imagine switching and starting over. I'm like,
okay,
I've got so much in the bank with him. Yeah. And he knows the rawest details. Now, I wasn't willing at that point to switch. That. And just, I guess for context too, we moved to Nashville sight unseen, didn't know a single person, and I was 14 weeks pregnant.
Yeah.
So for a job that was mine. And then my husband had to look for a new job. So like it wasn't a normal circumstance to begin with. Like that's a pretty high pressure, unknown situation. And it was so early in the marriage. And I just like my individual work with him though, I couldn't picture doing it with anyone else. Okay. So I'm like, can I keep you? He's like, yeah, I think he said, I don't remember what portion, but like, I think most of his practice he does on the phone.
Wow.
Or a lot of it.
Okay.
So like, because maybe Arizona's super transient, people are there and then they move or whatever it is. But he's like my rock. Like he really is. And I don't want to call him like a father figure because that's weird, but he's just like, I don't see it as a man telling me what to do. Okay. It's like, it's very much, a professional who I trust with every fiber of my being, like guiding me and has never steered me wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's I think going to the, like, how do you find the therapist that's right for you? You have to, it's a lot of trial and error, which sucks.
It could be.
It could be.
So here's the thing. If you've ever gone to therapy, done it and said, this isn't for me, it's probably not therapy. It's probably the therapist.
Yes.
So I think that's another topic Annie and I wanted to cover is there are bad therapists.
There are. And I think there's a lot of different, depending on the state that you live in, there are a lot of different ways to become licensed as a therapist.
Yeah.
And you need to do your research on that. Like if someone has maybe just like an undergraduate degree in something very different and not like mental health focused in your state and they're allowed to be a therapist, maybe you should decide if that's right for you.
Sure.
You should also think about, depending on where you live, you should think about the religious aspect. When I first moved here, I was trying to find a therapist desperately because like we moved with a newborn, it's kind of same thing during COVID, sight unseen, like crazy situation. And I got sort of catfished a few times by like Christian counselors, which is, if that's for you, that's great. It was not for me though. And I didn't know that's what was happening. And I actually had gone through work, like my work at the time had one of those like Lira, I think is what it was called. So you should also see if your employer offers a service to find a therapist through. And then you usually get like a discounted rate with those therapists. So I went through that service, but he like ended the session with the Lord's Prayer. And I was like, that's not for me. Cause like,
That's super inappropriate.
It felt very inappropriate for what I was looking for, so I didn't like that. And then there was another one who didn't like have it on her website, but as we went through a couple sessions, it came out that like her background was very much in like religious couples counseling, which sometimes religious couples counseling is shooting for different outcomes than marriage therapists.
Sure. Interesting.
I think y'all can pick up and put down. So
yeah,
that was another. So then I was really sad in Nashville because I was like, wait, am I ever going to find one that makes sense for me? And I did. Spoiler alert, I did. But it takes some trial and error, and like you have to jive with that person. Like,
totally. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, there's a part. Oh, should we start a matchmaking service
for therapists?
Yeah,
we should.
That's a great idea. Write it down.
Yeah,
business idea. I think, but it's true because it's like, finding a therapist is like this. You have to get over. It's hard because you have to get over this mental block of like, all right, I'm doing it. I'm going to therapy. We're going to do it. And then you go to your therapy appointment and they're like reading scriptures and you're like, not what I wanted. You know what I mean? Or whatever it is that happened to you or just we didn't have chemistry, or like I didn't like the way they spoke to me, or I didn't like the way I felt. It could just be a vibe. And
I've also talked to a lot of people who will ask their therapist in the first meeting, like, do you yourself have kids? Or are you yourself married or whatever? Because they can't get over, and that's okay. If that's what it takes to get a therapist, fine, ask those questions. But like, yeah, they don't want to see someone who doesn't have children because they don't feel like their experience in helping with parenting will be valid.
Oh, and interesting.
So if that's on your mind, get it out. Ask those questions.
Wow. Yeah. I would never even think to do that.
Really?
Oh, no.
Because that was how I kind of figured out that trial and error was how I figured out that like there was no way in hell I could go to a dude. Because I would like leave each session being like, just literally go do the opposet of what they told me.
Annie, I think you need to unpack that in your next therapy session.
Don't worry, I've unpacked it.
Oh my God. Annie's just like anti-misogyny is just so deep. She can't even listen to it.
I can't even be a part of the patriarchy if it's even in therapy. No, but I literally was like, I would just go do the opposite. And then I was like, I think I maybe need to talk to a woman. And so now I only ever go see women.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
But and I think this conversation is even pointing to like, look at the variation even in two people who are pretty similar, really close, same values, same beliefs with almost everything.
In what we're looking for.
And we're like aligned on so many things. And like, I see a man virtually.
Yeah.
And Annie sees a woman in person. And it's just like, it just works for us. Like, and actually mine is, I didn't know this until years in. This is what makes him a consummate professional. He's deeply religious, but I didn't know that because he doesn't bring that to his work.
Wow.
Like, it's just him personally. I'm like, oh, I think he was telling me like, oh, my office, I'm closed next week. I'm like, oh, where are you going? It's like a mission trip. I'm like,
you're like, wait, what?
I was like, you?
Yeah.
I had no idea. Usually it's something people lead with, but like it's not a part of his therapy.
He can practice without bringing his beliefs into it, which is you're right, is a consummate professional.
Correct. You have to do what works for you. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. You have to do what works for you. It might take a little bit of time to figure that out.
You might have to date some therapists.
Yeah, but it's well worth it.
It's well worth it.
It's well worth it. I love that. It's kind of like when you talked about how you didn't know your therapist was deeply religious and how that's like the consummate professional. It's like when we interviewed Nikki on the podcast, I think it was episode 2 or 3?
2, yeah.
2.
3, sorry.
3.
Yeah.
And she talked about how all of her mentors in the news industry, you couldn't tell like who they voted for because that's the mark of a consummate like news anchor professional.
Yes, that's right.
Anyway, I guess that was a subliminal plug for episode 2 of season 1 because it's great. Yeah.
Episode 1, season 3, Nikki Burdine. Yeah, that's a good.
Yeah,
that was a good moment.
Because you should be able, if they are very professional, they should be able to separate those things.
And also remember, like I said this already, I'm going to say it again because I think it's important. If you feel like you'd benefit from therapy and you had a bad experience, try someone else.
Again.
Just go again. Just like keep trying because you just haven't found your person yet. It is like dating. We need like an app.
That would be so. I can't believe that doesn't exist.
Maybe it
It's got
does.
to.
Maybe it does.
Maybe it's got to.
Maybe it does.
Someone write to us and tell us if it exists, because if not, we're about to
blow this industry
Yeah.
up. We touched on marriage and relationships, and I think
Yeah.
one thing I want to go back to on that when it comes to therapy, I think is we were talking about, like Andy said before, people will say your marriage is already done if you have to go to therapy, which is like truly the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Spoiler alert, it's probably the dude that's saying that. So like,
It's definitely the dude that's saying
yeah,
that.
like get over it.
But I think that when I look back on, I don't want to say I have any regrets, but when I think about premarital counseling, which I actually think is incredibly prominent.
Did you do it?
I didn't, but
Okay.
I think it's usually like recommended through the churches and the synagogues. Like
Yeah.
For whatever it's worth, to me, that's a little conflicting if I were to just look at it like objectively. Cause I'm like, oh, you fight through it and you last forever, like traditional marriages that are like, through religious kind of channels.
Yeah.
But I would say, I think the religious institutions do a really good job. I would say, I think these religious institutions do a good job of kind of helping I guess whoever's getting married within their institution to prepare for it. Because marriage, I look back on it, if I had known or if I had the guidance to be like, okay, you're not looking to like break up before you get married or walk down the aisle.
It's not a test.
It's not a test. It's, hey, if you have any sort of normal marriage, you will have bumps in the road. This is what they could look like. And this is how you two are going to kind of contractually agree and work through in advance how to get through it.
Yes. It's not like, it's not like a reality show where they're like, we're going to throw every scenario at them and see if they can withstand it. It's like preparing you, like all marriage counseling, and I'm sure including premarital, is like preparing you for the questions, like what do you need to be thinking about?
Yes.
Proactively. Like whether it's do I actually want to have children, because that's something that we need to be talking about now, or like what would I do if what do I think I would do if I was faced with infidelity, or what do I think I would do if there was financial ruin in our relationship? Those kind of things that you do need to like have some forethought on, and like what
like hash out prior.
Yeah.
And I think it's like a kind of a verbal contract, or just like an understanding that you can keep going back to.
Yeah.
And I think about, I forgot who told me this, but it came up once that like everyone goes into marriage or relationships thinking, I would never cheat, I would never get divorced, I would never, whatever the worst things are that you say I would never do. The truth is, anyone would do anything. Everyone has a different breaking point.
For sure.
So that's what kind of premarital, I think a lot of the reason why premarital counseling exists is, okay, let's go down that road. Like, you would never cheat? No, you would.
Yeah.
What would get you there, though?
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Or you'd never get divorced? Yeah, you would. What would get you there, though? Let's work backwards.
Yeah.
That's my understanding of premarital counseling.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like marriage counseling is very similar. It's trying to like prepare you both to deal better with stress and challenges within your relationship so that you do not reach those breaking points.
Right. And so you can really listen to each other, because I think it's also made me, therapy in general, whether it's solo or with my partner, is such a good exercise in not just listening, but hearing people and considering other perspectives, considering, like, it's really taught me the true value of how no two people are built differently. This is going to be a terrible example. We might want to cut it, but I don't even know if I want to say it.
Okay, don't then. Yeah.
Okay, never mind. Should I? Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I am like a staunchly pro-choice person.
Okay. Yeah.
Period. It's something I take, it's a super hot topic. It's something I take super seriously.
Yeah.
And I've gotten to the point, I think therapy has kind of taught me, like, someone can be so pro-life and I can find that really vile and still understand that someone else has a different lived experience, has a different thought pattern, and I can hold space for that while disagreeing with them and really voting against their wishes to come true. And it's really hard to do that.
That is a beautiful segue to like when therapy becomes toxic, which is when you are seeing a therapist or using therapy in a way to convince you that everyone in your life who thinks differently than you is toxic.
Do therapists validate that?
There are definitely bad therapists that validate that.
See, that's trash.
So that's like a red flag. I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No,
but
that's kind of the point I wanted to make. Like, I would say, because something I wanted to use the abortion topic just because it's super personal, it's super heated, it's very emotional,
and it's so important because it's about to like determine a civil war or not. It's like extremely
totally
poignant. Yeah.
So like, and that's not usually the stuff we talk about on here. We like to be like silly geese, and this is not like a silly goose conversation, but I'm just using this as an example of like, I really think the tools of therapy have really helped me empathize with people and ideologies that I don't believe in, that I can't imagine why anyone would feel that way. But I can also understand that just like your lived experience is different. The way you were brought up is different. Your values are different. And this is your truth.
Yes.
And that can live where it lives. And I'm still going to really hope that you're going to be the one who has to suffer with the law that I would like.
Or like being at peace with their own process, knowing like, okay, that's how you feel right now, but there's going to come a time in your life, whether it's like you have a daughter or whatever, where like you might end up feeling differently, and I just have to respect that process for you.
For sure.
And like you're on your own journey, if you will. But there are absolutely, I completely agree. I think that if you're doing the real work and you have a good therapist and you're actually like taking to heart what you're learning in there and growing and evolving as a human, you come out with more understanding for people.
Yes.
You come out with like more patience and tolerance for people. But I think, unfortunately, what's happening with like therapy becoming mainstream is that people believe that going to therapy is all about like validating all of these really, really hard lines they want to draw in life.
Yes.
Or I think that's maybe some of the older generation's experience with their own kids.
Right.
Like the boomers are maybe experiencing from our generation, like, well, great, they're in therapy and now they're going to like go unpack their childhood and decide I was a shitty parent and cut me off. And it's like, that shouldn't be the point.
That shouldn't be the point.
And if you're seeing a therapist who thinks you should cut off a parent who was truly trying to do their best, that's not a good sign.
That's not a good sign. I think let's stay on that.
Yeah.
Because Annie and I were talking about this, and we want everyone who's listening, hopefully we have attracted some boomers at this point, because we're speaking on your behalf now.
Yeah.
I guess, or just anyone who's like kind of anti-therapy or has seen red flags. We see them too.
Yes.
And I think we also think like therapy has reached a point where it's kind of gone too far in some realms. So
Yes.
it's like, it is this delicate balance of like, when does it make sense and when does it not? And we've thought of some red flags. Like when someone, I hear it way too often that I've gone no contact with this person.
Yes.
And to me, going no contact, of course, there are times and
Absolutely.
places for it. I also think if that's like the only strategy to like dealing with your trauma or frustrations or relationships, that's insane to me.
And that means you, the person who's no contacting someone, who's cutting someone off so harshly, like actually has a lot more work to do, because it goes back to that, like, and I don't know, I might really upset some people in my life with this, I'm realizing, but like it goes back to that empathy piece of, if you're cutting someone off and saying like, you can't see me, we're done, then you haven't gotten to the point where you can understand maybe why that person is annoying, or understand why that person is making choices you don't agree with.
Right.
And if they're not harming you, like you're not, you know, if it's an abusive situation, of course, there's absolutely.
Of course, there's reasons to go no contact.
Yes.
I just see it thrown around way too much now.
It's getting flown around so much. And as the person who was cut off from people, who I am the one who was, how do I say that?
Gone no contact on.
Yeah, like I'm the one who people were like, I'm done. It's so unbelievably hurtful.
Yeah.
And like it has, well, actually, I was going to say it has an impact you don't even realize, but in reality, it's like, it's pretty fucking obvious what the impact is.
Totally.
It's just not, everything doesn't have to be black and white. And
Right. Like that's the thing, is like, I feel like nuance is where therapy thrives. Like working
Yes.
through nuance. And it almost reminds me, going no contact, of like how we put a trigger warning on everything.
yes,
It's like,
yes.
you don't need a trigger. The trigger warning generation has got to like relax a little bit, because I understand there are reasons why content warnings, trigger warnings exist, for sure.
Yeah.
But not everything needs one.
No, and it's very similar to like, the way we're overusing the word trauma, and I know for sure, like my own therapist would agree with this. Like we said, there's no contest when it comes to trauma, but we need to stop using that word in a way where like it's losing its value because it's a really serious thing.
Yes.
But like I had someone say to me, there was some girl drama going on in my life. This is recent, by the way. And someone said something bad about another woman behind her back. And I was trying to say, like, you need to speak to that person directly. I do not want it. Like, I'm not going to be the messenger. I've lived enough of this in my life to know, like, I'm not getting involved here. And they were like, well, I have a lot of trauma about someone saying something behind my back and not knowing. And so I really need you to tell me. And I was like, that's not trauma. That's just me growing up as a girl.
Right.
And like having a 3-way phone call in the 90s.
You
like,
could, I mean, we could maybe call that a trigger.
Yeah.
Or like a little bit of
but
a
it was like
yeah.
being used to manipulate me into telling them what someone else said. And I was
No.
like, no. We don't get to put the T word on that.
No.
That was just like going to middle school.
Okay, this isn't related, kind of is, but you know what else? You know what other word has lost a lot of value to me? Bullying.
Love. Oh.
What were you just going to say?
I said love. I was kidding.
Oh, love. No. No, the word bullying or the term bullying.
Because it's a serious thing.
It's a serious thing that like young kids are committing over. And when I see like an influencer online who's like, I've been bullied online for so long, and it's like all the comments are like, stop photoshopping your outfits.
Right.
It's like, shut up. Like, leave bullying for the real.
My God, are we boomers?
Oh my God.
Wait. Is this the episode where we're like...
No, like we're the millennial, like whatever millennials are going to be called to their parents. Like maybe it's just millennials.
Yeah.
Like, because boomer is like a negative word.
Yeah.
But they're called baby boomers. Maybe
right,
like...
it's actually like a scientific word.
Like such a millie.
It's just a millie.
Oh my God, we're going to be the millies that like our kids are like, ugh, well, this is the first iteration of it.
For sure.
Oh my gosh.
But I do think, I do think there are a lot of ways where people are misusing therapy. And
Agreed.
It's hurtful.
Yeah.
So, Joelle, I meant to say this earlier and I totally forgot, but here's something I think we also might disagree on, because I can't tell. I don't know for sure the answer from your journey story.
Okay.
I think that another red flag or something you should be cognizant of when looking for a therapist, especially a marriage therapist, is I think you have to start fresh with someone. Like the two of you need to go to a new person. I don't think you can see someone who's already been seeing your spouse. Does that make sense?
It does, but I staunchly disagree.
You disagree? Okay.
Well, yeah, because it works for me.
Okay, so you guys started going to yours.
No. Chad was with him first, but not for long.
Okay.
We saw him individual. Actually, now that I think about it, he saw him first, then I went there too, and then I saw him individually.
Oh, that's really interesting. So you guys were seeing like the same person.
Yeah.
Like separately. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
No, I actually, it's funny. So I guess it could work both ways, considering like we have different experiences with this. But to me, it's like they know both. He knows both of us inside and out, and our relationship inside and out.
See, I have never wanted to do that. So we now see. How do I explain? Our marriage counselor now sees us individually sometimes, but it's almost like the opposite of what, this is really interesting. Maybe this is just dynamics about our marriages. It's like, it's almost the opposite of what you were saying, where sometimes you use your therapist as like an expediter, where you're like, hey, let's just get together and talk about this.
Yes.
She uses individual sessions to expedite us through things.
Oh, okay.
So that's interesting. So that's another thing of like, you can use it in so many different ways. Again, the important thing is that it's working for you. So like,
do what works.
But yes,
for you.
She'll have individual sessions to do like, I think I wrote about this on my Substack, the protective parts mapping of like trying to figure out why we have these behaviors and why we need to get rid of them. So that's fascinating to me too.
Yeah.
Like we've done the opposite, but it's worked.
Totally.
So it's just a little hot take aside.
Yeah. Again, like there's not one way of doing this, and there's
Yeah.
plenty of bad ones out there, like we said.
Yeah.
So the other thing we wanted to talk about in terms of like adverse effects and warning. Oh, well, so we talked about like our boomer stuff, which is like trauma. What did you tell me in the car the other night? Everyone's dad is a narcissist.
Yes. Like I'm so sick of everyone's dad being diagnosed as a narcissist. Like it's not fair. There were just men in the 80s and 90s.
Right. Like just Give dad a break.
Give him a
I mean, of course, I'm sure some of your dads are narcissists.
Yes, of course.
And you should go no contact. But there's just so much there's so many like therapy words and like therapy speak that's become, I think, has given therapy kind of a bad name.
Yes.
And a lot of the stuff we're talking about is that. So listen, there is a spectrum, but just remember it's nuanced and not everything has to be a trigger or a trauma or a boundary cutting exercise. Like it doesn't have to be all these things, and you should protect your peace and do what works for you. But it doesn't, like, I just feel like the extremes are what make anything bad, and including therapy.
And I think the goal, again, like the goal of therapy is at the end of the day, it's tolerance. Like it's tolerance for other people, it's tolerance for yourself, it's tolerance for your partner. And so if you're finding yourself in a situation where you're in therapy that's actually like reducing tolerance, which is having these adverse effects of like believing that every single person in your life is toxic, then like you got to do a little bit of introspection of like, wait, this isn't increasing my window of tolerance. This is actually like significantly decreasing it.
Right.
And that's not good.
No. You don't want to be in an echo chamber.
No.
That's not going to help.
Lived in Seattle, already did that.
So one of the last topics we wanted to cover was this kind of rise and boom of therapists on different media, whether that's TV media, social media, like TikTok therapists. And why I think it's a good thing and a bad thing. I think it's mostly a bad thing because, like you said to me the other day, it's like it makes this therapy like a one-way thing. And I think some people can watch these online therapists talk and you can get a really profound soundbite and it sounds so good. And it's like reading, you know, when you like stumble upon like a motivational quote and it just hits you and then you make it your phone background and it's like, that's me. But like when it's therapy and it's the only way you're getting kind of this type of someone talking to you is through a TikTok or someone on TV like Dr. Phil, I don't know, like something like that. It's not you. They're not talking to you. And I think that's so important to remember that that's not real therapy.
No.
It might be really good advice.
Yeah.
And it might open your mind to something, but it's not tailored to you. And I would just caution you.
Yeah. Like it might have been something that you should have put in your AOL Instant Messenger profile in like a cute font.
Yes.
But it's not therapy.
Correct. And I do listen, there are times where I'll scroll back through something. I'm like, oh, that hits, you know, like that just totally like nailed me right there. But it doesn't, that's not like, don't confuse that.
Yeah.
For actually doing the work.
Yes. Do not.
Don't confuse it for doing the work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully this is helpful to like get people over that like, well, I actually don't need therapy, I have nothing to talk about hump, and B, I just feel like people have a lot of questions like, where do you start, how do you figure out if it's the right one, what do you look out for, and like hopefully we've bantered enough about that like people have a good place to start.
I would say so too. I would say also like definitely do go to your friends. Like I don't think I would have found mine without having known him prior through someone.
Yeah.
But definitely like your friends who you feel safe with and comfortable, who you know may be in therapy, ask them about theirs. And then like maybe if it's not their therapist, maybe it's someone in their practice, or just like try to get some recommendations through people that you trust. And I think that's a good way to start. Or Annie said, like, look through your job if you have like a good benefit that way. Yeah. I think, you know, BetterHelp could be, I don't know BetterHelp personally, but it sounds like a really good place to start for a lot of people. And I feel like eventually, like anything else, like just take one step and it'll lead to the next one.
That's right. One foot in front of the other.
Yeah. Anything else on therapy? Any advice for our banter queens and kings and imposters?
I think you hit it. I don't know if I full circle made this point of like you made a good point about like not wanting to start over with your dude, but you don't need to because like he's doing a good job. But I guess don't be afraid of starting. I'm gonna come from the perspective of like, don't be afraid of starting over. Like if you move and you're like me and you want someone face to face, like take time off when you need it, but also like don't be afraid of starting over, because I think what you'll be shocked to figure out is that as you go through this dating therapist process trying to find the right one, the things that you feel the need to update them on or to like give them background on are going to change as you have evolved. Yeah. Like the last therapist that I started with and that I've been with for a while, I don't even think I I think she knows that our house burned down, but I don't think I even talked about it because I truly am like, there's not really a whole lot left I need to work through on that. You know, like that part of history just kind of wasn't present. Whereas there was a time in my life where that's all I needed to talk about was like, this was crazy. I have OCD about unplugging things now.
Right.
Like, so don't be scared about that. Don't let restarting be a hindrance to continuing down that path.
Well, that's a great point. It's honestly good advice for me because I always say like when my therapy, like when he dies eventually, like what am I going to do?
Which is funny because he's older, right?
No, he's like in his 60s.
Oh, okay. I thought he was like in his 70s, right? And so
No,
I was like,
no.
okay.
But like I'm just saying, like if he dropped dead, I feel like I don't know what I would do with my life.
But you'd be okay.
But I'd be okay. I would find someone else.
Yeah.
And then I would need therapy to get over his death.
Yeah.
Like separately. So that would. This is dark. So let me end on this. Is my advice, or I guess my kind of anecdote about therapy to finish is when I got into it as like a reparative mechanism of like, I'm broken, fix me. Like not to be too dramatic, but like these things are broken, fix me. And now I really see it as like, yes, it is spot treating those things that happened in my life, but it's more even from the perspective of like, make me better.
Yeah.
So it's not just fixing to get you to even, it's make you better to make yourself the best version of yourself. And again, like we got one life. And if you listen to our last episode with Figgy, like she kept quoting so beautifully.
Mary Oliver, yeah.
Yeah. It was just like, what are you going to do with this one precious wild life? And it's like, kind of tie it back here.
Yeah.
Be your best version. Be someone who understands other people and understands yourself, and you'll just have a better experience all the way around when it comes to life.
Increasing tolerance is my thing. Like that's, if you increase tolerance, life is easier. That doesn't mean having porous boundaries. That means like just finding more ways to be tolerant of people, situations, and all the things life throws at you.
And the world would be a better place if everyone did therapy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We'd all understand each other more.
Yeah.
Well, this has been, I think, a really important episode. We can't wait to hear your feedback. I hope that this, inspires if it inspires one person to go take care of themselves.
Yes.
It was worth it.
That's right.
That's right. Well, this has been Joelle.
This has been Annie.
And we will catch you next time.